Este vorba despre domnul Sjaak Pappe, Hofstede Insights, biroul din Olanda, care ne va vorbi despre strategie, cultură și mic dejun.
I'd probably stay down here because I like to move around too. You may find I'm Dutch. I can't help that. And the name Pop is strange also, by the way. But you may find the title very strange, don't you? I hope you'll have had breakfast. But the meaning is very seriously. Culture eats your strategy if you don't take it into account. And culture is not about handing business cards, but it's about something else. Oh, that's that word. All right. Like I said, I'm Dutch, although my ancestors were French and German, and on the right-hand side is Suriname. So you may think of yourself, you know, how Romanian are you, really? You know, I'm partly only Dutch, you know. Everything is arranged here for me when I came here, and I love that. That's my German background, yeah, despite the fact that I'm Dutch. I worked for Texaco and Boots worldwide in about 20 countries and dealt with all kinds of things and made all kinds of mistakes, which most of the time had to do with culture. And with Hofstede Insights, my colleague George this afternoon will tell us a little bit more about Hofstede Insights, but basically what we do, we help organizations worldwide to deal with the impact of culture. So I'll talk a little bit about what culture is. Is it still important? Because a lot of people say, you know, we're globalizing, it's not important anymore. Well, I'll surprise you by the fact that because of globalizing, we get more aware of our own culture. And therefore, we became more proud of our own culture. So how do we visualize a fuzzy thing like culture? And what can businessmen and diplomats learn from each other? Now, I have a question for you. Do you know where you're sitting now, where the North Pole is? Who doesn't know that? Let me check. Who doesn't know where it is? Yeah, George, you were right. How did you know that? Okay, the North Pole is over there. The compass. Knowledge about culture is having the compass to go the right direction. Because you all know where the North Pole is. But from here, it would be very difficult to understand where to go. Culture and knowledge will help you in that regard. Yeah? Because when you do business worldwide, the cultural lion is always lurking. You may not be looking around and watching on that. What is culture? Basically, culture is about the unwritten rules of the social game. That's what it's all about. And it's learned. You learn it in the first 10 to 20 years of your life by your parents or the people that raised you. And it's about the social rules. It's about when Granny comes in, you say, you know, pay attention to her, hold your tongue, or when Granny comes in, you know, speak up. Sit at the same table as Granny. And you learn all these rules over the years. It's passed on from generation by generation, and no group can escape from it. It reproduces itself. And mostly, what important is to understand, culture has a lot of layers, but the key things are the values, the emotional preferences of people for a certain type of behavior. Yeah. There are many forms of culture. I think this is the British countryside, isn't it, Sjaak? It looks like it, doesn't it? Yeah, it does. You have to deal with national cultures, which is, you know, a choice of us, and that's not easy to change. Like nature is not easy to change. When you deal with culture, you have to deal with the cultures of companies, governments, and that's like a garden. You can change that. You can change the culture of an organization. And team culture is like a bouquet of flowers. It's easy to change. You have to give it water, else it dies. Is it still important? Here are some failures in the world. In the middle, you see the first merger between KLM and Alitalia, and the Dutch and the Italians couldn't really understand each other. Yeah? The Dutch said many times, you know, I forbid you to do this or that. No, are there any Italians in the room? You know, if you forbid an Italian to do something, he'll do it. Yeah? So that's the first strategy I teach you by today. Easy, no cost charge. Forbid them and they'll do it. Yeah? I know you've learned that. Lehman Brothers, well, I don't need to talk about that. You know, it was a very dysfunctional culture. The Titanic, they couldn't go down. Daimler Chrysler, same way. This match between the Germans and the Americans. Is it still important also in diplomacy or business world? Probably it is. Yeah. On the right-hand side, you see the Greek debt, but on the right-hand side, the Italian austerity and growth at the time of Mr. Berlusconi. Why was he elected all the time? Because also the environment said, you know, you shouldn't vote Mr. Berlusconi. And the Italians thought, well, you don't insult us, we'll vote for him. And the German Prime Minister, Mr. Schäuble, publicly said, you know, please do not vote for Mr. Berlusconi. And of course, Italians, deep in their heart, like, you know, the machoism of Mr. Berlusconi. So they like to be a little bit of him the same. But also in warfare, culture plays a role. Certain armies are very masculine, they want to fight. Other armies are more like, you know, let's try to be a little bit more tactical, and likes to be patient, or if they're beaten, they'll come back if you don't integrate them in your army, or if you really try to you know, get rid of them. It's very difficult in that regard if you do not accept that they like you know, losing face, for example. It's very difficult in Middle East armies and Eastern armies. If you like to lose them face, they'll come back to you. So, this is Mr. Peter Drucker. Who has heard of him? Yeah. Mr. Peter Drucker is an Austrian German, and he created this tool of cultural strategy for breakfast. So remember, if you go abroad, you may have a great strategy. But if you don't know the cultures involved, your strategy will not be realized. Because culture is stronger than strategy. It's ingrained in us, it is our emotional preference for a certain type of behavior. So that's why you should always use that hand in hand. Your strategy, understanding the culture of your business partner, of your country, and trying to align in that part. So you may think yourself, I'm not going to ask it here, but you may ask yourself, how do you rate yourself as a businessman or businesswoman or diplomat who are going internationally? How do I perform internationally? How do I connect with others? Is that easy? Do I really enjoy being abroad? Yeah. A lot of people that go abroad, they go through a sort of culture clash. Sean's probably had it, I've had it. You know, many times you think, it starts like a honeymoon, then you go abroad and you think, oh, this is a great country, I love Romania, you know. And then you get confronted with bureaucracy, you're like, I don't like this. This is different in my country, I don't like this. You know. And then you go through this culture shock phase. Either you go through it or not. If you don't get through it, I always say, go back to your home country. Else you get very, very unhappy. Very unhappy. There are no figures about it, but there are statements that 20 to 30% of people that work internationally are not happy. And really want to go back. To measure is to know. That is important. Am I still on time? Yeah? Okay. Take my time. Don't say that to me. If you say to me, take your time, I'll talk for hours. So don't do that, because then the other 18 speakers will be annoyed about that. Culture is too complex to make an educated guess. Yeah? One human being is a complex person, you put 100 together, it gets even more complex. So don't do that. So that's why we are founded by Professor Geert Hofstede. Someone heard of him? Ah, good. Oh, two, sorry, I missed you there. He's the, let's say, the founder of competitive cultural research. That means making culture visible. What are we talking about? So that's why he started research on hundreds of thousands of people around the world. It's still going on. We validate our research. And that means we have a big database on what cultures are about, what people prefer. We use for that a couple of models. One is about people's values, what do people emotionally prefer. One is about what are companies like. That's more tailor-made assessed, because we don't have all companies of the world, of course, but we can measure that. And the last one is about consumer emotional preferences in a certain market. So if you want to know something about the 20-year age people with a higher education in Hong Kong, the data are there about their emotional preferences. And that's useful for doing marketing. Now, hope you already are convinced that culture is important. It's a very strong thing. It determines about half the things that happen in our lives. So what can the business world learn from diplomats? I think it was talked about earlier. Diplomats understand power structures better most of the time than business people. Not all the time, because they're very good business people. Most of the time, because of the politics, they have a good understanding of power structures. And for business people, that is important. If you come from a low power distance culture, you tend to do business with your equal partner and tend to forget that there's a hierarchy behind this person. For example, the Netherlands is a low hierarchical country. We need bosses. They are there for convenience, to sign off my expense sheets, or to create conditions under I can work. Romania is different, hierarchical country. So if I do business with someone from Romania, I need to understand that there's power structure behind it. Diplomats are very good with that. Another thing is that a lot of business people internationally are extremely task-oriented. I want to sell my products and go and do it. I have the best products in the world, I'll do it. Yeah. Talk to a lot of organizations in China and they'll tell you different stories. What important is in many countries in the world, also in Romania, is relations. For example, in my home country, relations are important but not that important. We talk for 3 seconds about the weather and then we start doing business. When I go to Turkey, I first need to talk about a lot of other things, and therefore diplomats understand that. From diplomats you can learn how to build a relationship. That can take weeks, months, or longer. Cocktail parties, cyberspace, anything is important to build relationships. I'm too task-oriented. I don't know how to do that. So I use other people to help me build a relationship. Another part that you can learn from diplomats is the fact that business people are very action-driven. And therefore, you can learn from diplomats, they know how the tactical route works. Another important aspect, maybe a lot of business people are too relaxed or too stressed, but at least diplomats understand the game of certainty is needed. And for that, they don't want any surprises. They can help you to understand what information is needed in certain situations. Many companies look for short-term success. Diplomats never do. They have a long-term perspective. And understand that also your opponent can have a long-term perspective. So that's important. And last but not least, what important is that business people sometimes don't really understand the local rituals or the local etiquette of natural drives. Diplomats are brilliant at that. You can learn it from that. A little example, this is an American oil company. The American oil company, an example of national culture, explained to all people in Europe that they should assess their leaders anonymously online. And these are the figures. Northern Europe performed from a financial point of view very well. Latin Europe and Eastern Europe didn't perform very well. When they did the assessment of the leaders in Northern Europe was they had a bad score, and leaders in the southern part had a good score. And the parent company said, I don't understand that. The Northern Europe scores high, and Southern Europe and Eastern Europe doesn't, and the score of the leaders is different. What is that? The cause is culture. Yeah? People don't trust that it's anonymous. It's all about hierarchy. People don't trust that. It's anonymous. So they think, okay, I'll give the people a good score, and I'm on the safe side. And in Northern Europe, they think, aha, this is a good opportunity to put my boss with his 2 feet on the ground. Okay? So the solution is always understand it and develop different strategies. Getting there. When we talk about organizations and negotiations, there diplomats and business people can learn from each other. You focus on goals or the means and the money. Diplomats can vary on the situation. They can say, we should focus on the target, or we should focus on the means. Most of the time, again, business people are very result-oriented. Business people are very client-oriented. Diplomats look at the interests of the country. So there, diplomats could learn maybe a little bit more from business people. Control. Diplomats understand that you cannot predict the environment. And therefore, it is important to be flexible. Sometimes I've noticed that business people are not very flexible. They have their approach. Control, that's another aspect which is important. For business people, they can be very open, or they can be very professional in terms of, we are good engineers. For diplomats, it's important to be loyal. Therefore, the variety in which business people have to be, let's say, very open or not very open, which is the next part too. What I've learned with a lot of businesses that they are sometimes very open in sharing their information. Thank you, Sean, for your previous story about the fact about the cybercrime. It's extremely important to be secretive. I have clients who are withdrawing their research and development departments from China because nothing is safe anymore. Yeah? Therefore, you can learn from diplomats also, business people, that they are careful about what do I share and what do I not share. What's important is, of course, culture is all about people. And so people focus is very crucial. This is an example of a takeover of a Dutch multinational taking over, Portuguese and Italians. And what they did, they measured the culture of this company, and based on that, they understood that there are synergies. Certain parts of the takeovers were goal-orientated, other parts were not goal-orientated. One part was customer-focused, other were not customer-focused. And they understood the importance of synergy. You know how much mergers and acquisitions fail? Any idea? Percentages? 80%. 80. In terms of the initial goals. And of this 80%, again, 80% fails because of culture. The law of Pareto. Yeah? The law of Pareto. Because they don't want to understand the culture and the cultural differences. You better learn it because it will bring you a lot of synergies. So, the lesson. Align culture and your strategy. else they'll eat you for breakfast. Thank you.